Hi, Gerhard Bloom, once again looking at the tyranny and the delusions of the social justice movement. So there's been much great commentary on Joe Biden's performance in his debate against Donald Trump. But I feel absolutely obliged to offer my 2 cents for what it's worth. Just in the weeks leading up to this, you had leftist media, I'm being redundant there, saying that, these images, videos, in numerous occasions where Joe Biden is mumbling, bumbling, and fumbling, cheap fakes. That's right, Karine Jean-Pierre and other media spokespeople, cheap fakes. No, not deep fakes. No, edited improperly, taken out of context, and then the truth comes out. People were wondering, what is that smell of formaldehyde? That's Joe Biden's aftershave, so we're told. Smell of formaldehyde. This guy is the walking dead. At any rate, the truth was out, right? The incoherence. But what really set me to offer my 2 cents in the wake of that sad performance, Jill Biden, and excuse me, I'll have to refer to my notes a few times here. Jill Biden tells Joe Biden, "You did great. You answered all the questions." Andrew Klavan, he's a public commentary, social critic, absolutely love the man. He says she spoke to the President of the United States, and yes, her husband, as though he was a little leaguer who struck out every time at bat. You swung at every ball. Sure, Joe answered every question, just to the extent that you could understand his reply. They were vacuous misrepresentations and lies. And she asked, in this post-apocalyptic event held in Joe Biden's honor, she said, and what did Trump do? And everybody lied. Donald Trump lied. Well, I've got a short list of the lies, the absolute lies that Joe Biden on stage told the American public. And I know the reply, people will reply back. Donald Trump, he lies. Donald Trump, there's a difference between bullshitting and lies. A bullshitter doesn't actually expect you to believe their magnifications. You ask a young man how many women he slept with, you can divide that answer easily by 2. That's a bullshitter. You ask a young woman how many young men she slept with, divide that answer by 2, at least. At any rate, here we go. He repeated that lie about Charlottesville. Biden goes on at great length about Donald Trump, in the face of Nazis, neo-Nazis, tiki torch carrying fascists and white nationalists. Biden says he got into the race, the presidency, the first time around because he saw Donald Trump saying there were good people on both sides, spreading that lie. And this was the most shallow lie, I think, in the history of the world. It was obvious. Donald Trump, in the same sentence, he says, and this is a quote, Donald Trump declared, yes, you have many people in that group other than neo-Nazis and white nationalists. And the press has treated them absolutely unfairly. That's right. Treated them, not everybody. This was over, people wanting to get a Civil War general, the statue removed. There were people who were against the toppling down of statues. It represents part of their history and culture, Southern culture. And yes, you had neo-Nazis and white nationalists, but Donald Trump, many people other than neo-Nazis and white nationalists, This was in the very same speech where he says there were good people on both sides, and there were. You can, the statue of General Lee, or I believe it was, okay, reasonable people can debate the issue, but just because somebody is in favor of keeping that historical monument in place doesn't mean they're a neo-Nazi or a white nationalist. And so they were unfairly targeted. But the media repeatedly tossed this out, absolutely obnoxious. And the insurrection, January 6th, I don't know if you know that absolutely nobody has been charged with insurrection. Nobody. Because it wasn't an insurrection. It was a riot. There were some people who behaved absolutely disgracefully. This is not on Donald Trump. Donald Trump, in that speech that he had in D.C. that very day, just moments before the people marched off to the Capitol, Donald Trump told the crowd, march peacefully and patriotically, to let your voices be heard. Peacefully and patriotically. Joe Biden left that account out. One person was killed in the riots that happened in the Capitol. Ashley Babbitt, shot point blank range. Absolutely, there were no exigent circumstances. The cop that shot her had no reason to fear for his life or the imminent threat of serious harm to absolutely anybody. Shot her point blank, dead. And this business of, police being killed in the Capitol, it was a lie that the media kept repeating ad nauseum. And Joe Biden tells you that under his watch, no soldiers were killed. No soldiers were killed. Imagine how the families of those 13 American soldiers who were blown to bits, killed under that catastrophic withdrawal from Afghanistan and Kabul. You know who Biden turned over the security to the external perimeter over to? Yes, the Taliban. The Taliban, Joe Biden. Donald Trump asked why none of his generals were fired over that debacle. Here's the answer. Donald Trump knows this, I know this, and Joe Biden knows this. Joe Biden was warned by his general that this would be an absolute fiasco, and it was. Resulted in the needless deaths of American soldiers and billions of dollars of weapons and material falling into the hands of those murderous Taliban. And yes, they evacuated Bagram Air Force Base, snuck out in the middle of the night, didn't even let the our allies at the time, didn't advise them at all. Well, the Taliban prisoners, amongst those that were released from the prisons there, was the guy who lit up the suicide bomber that killed those American soldiers. And yes, others grievously injured. This is Joe Biden. And that is why he didn't fire anybody, because he couldn't. If he had attempted to fire any of those generals, they would have been in front of the microphone saying, you know who told me to do this? Joe Biden, against my advice. And I have said this previously. Any of those generals who had a spine, they get paid to have spine, says, there, I'm done. I will not support this operation. It will get people killed. And yes, he left hundreds of American citizens behind enemy lines and thousands of Afghans who risked their lives serving the NATO operation there and the American forces. Absolutely left them behind, and yes, slaughtered. They were being slaughtered as the Americans were withdrawing from Afghanistan. This is Joe Biden, on Joe Biden. Oh, but didn't Donald Trump orchestrated a deal for American withdrawal from Afghanistan. No soldiers had been killed in the 6 months prior to that fiasco. No one was killed in the 6 months that Donald Trump had that operation going. And Donald Trump told him, you kill American soldiers and that green machine will turn around. And I'm on record as saying the withdrawal from Afghanistan, utterly unnecessary. Should have kept Bagram Air Force Base, and the minute the Taliban started to amass in strength, you decimate them with air power. But at any rate, and Joe Biden calling Donald Trump a convicted felon. Well, he's convicted, at least on paper, until it gets overthrown. It will get overruled. And serious legal scholars, both leftists and conservatives recognized that this was an absolute fraud. And Donald Trump correctly calls out, isn't Hunter Biden a convicted felon? And this felony is well-deserved. And Donald Trump is also correct in pointing out that the prosecution that were looking into Hunter Biden slow-walked the investigation so that the most serious allegations, the statute of limitations would expire on them. Why? Because they deeply influenced Joe Biden and that entire syndicate, that entire grifting operation, influence peddling, grifting operation. Hunter Biden was on Air Force Two with his pop, the Vice President of the United States, flying to China, orchestrating million-dollar deals. That family has about a couple of dozen shell corporations, shell corporations, so they can funnel money, millions of dollars from China, from Russia, and the Ukraine. And Joe Biden, as Vice President, held up $1 million in aid to the Ukraine that had been approved by the State Department. Yep, they looked into the Ukraine and its combating corruption and said, yes, these dollars are well-deserved. They're doing a good job of fighting corruption. And what does Joe Biden do? Says, you won't get that $1 billion unless you pull off that investigator looking into Burisma. Why? Because his son, Hunter Biden, was working for Burisma at the time. And Joe Biden, no, never discuss business. He's on a plane to China with his dad. What are you doing on this plane? You're not a member of the government. And photographs of Hunter Biden's business partners with Joe Biden. That's right, with Joe Biden. I mean, the list goes on this stuff. And the border was open under Trump, and Biden has closed the border. This is an exact mirror image of the truth. Donald Trump had sealed that border. Record lows of illegal immigrants coming across. Joe Biden, the first day in office, he rescinded about 90 policies dealing with that border. The Remain in Mexico, and you get caught in, you get sent back. And Joe Biden, under his watch, millions, about 8 to 10 million illegal immigrants have flooded in. And Joe Biden's talking about how he's, I forget the wordage, something about how he kicked healthcare, and Donald Trump is right. These millions of illegal immigrants are overwhelming the social welfare services, overrunning schools and hospitals, hotels in New York. Billions of dollars, not millions, billions of dollars in aid are going to these illegal immigrants. Just recently, 8 people from Tajikistan arrested, ties with ISIS. And just a day or two ago, a report about 300 illegal immigrants smuggled in, ties to ISIS. These people, about 145 people were killed by ISIS in Moscow. And they're responsible for untold deaths. And now, over 300 illegal immigrants brought in by ISIS. How many of these are ISIS terrorists? Well, geez, we just don't know. And Biden, the border is closed. Mayorkas, the border is closed. And then just like 10 minutes ago, oh, well, this border crisis, this is on Trump. Which is it? Was the border closed, or were you lying to us all along? Absolutely awful. And inflation. No, there wasn't rampant inflation under Trump. The inflation was hovering around 1.6 to 2%, which is normal, which is healthy rate of inflation. Under Biden, it has soared. But he pretends to tell you, like, he's like, one of these Jedi, oh, no, you're okay. You're okay. Jedi mind trick, right? Except you can't afford to fill up your car or feed yourself, right? This is under Joe Biden's watch. And, oh, I forgot to mention. I mentioned it in previous videos. There was a mother of 5 raped and murdered, yes, by an illegal immigrant. A 13-year-old girl, 13-year-old girl, raped and killed. Raped and killed, yes, by 2 illegal immigrants. And then another 13-year-old girl viciously raped for and extended for about 2 hours by these thugs, illegal immigrants, videotaped that horror show. They're illegal. They had no place in this country. They should not have been released. And telling the world that Donald Trump had called the fallen American soldiers, Second World War suckers and losers, it is a slanderous lie. Absolutely no evidence of this at all. None. And continue to spread this poisonous lie. And recall, in the previous debate between Trump and Biden, Donald Trump says that the Hunter Biden laptop is real. And Joe Biden, whose FBI had long since known that the Hunter Biden laptop was not disinformation. They had validated that very fact. It was Hunter's laptop, the contents of which were real. And Joe Biden told the American public in the last presidential election that, oh no, they have 51 senior Intel officials who say that, it has all the hallmarks of Russian disinformation, except it wasn't disinformation, it was real, and plenty of incriminating evidence against Joe Biden. Absolutely shocking and shameful. And the Ukraine. Donald Trump is exactly right. Under Obama and Biden, Russia invades Crimea. Russia invades Ukraine. Under Donald Trump, there's no invasion, none. Under Joe Biden as president, Joe Biden says as Russia is amassing on the Ukrainian border, well, we'll have to see if it's a minor incursion or not. Well, it wasn't a minor incursion, and maybe some show of strength. And the disaster in Gaza with the Palestinians, which is undoubtedly going to grow up to a much larger conflict involving, at minimum, Hezbollah in Lebanon, and quite likely with militants in Syria and Iraq, and yes, Iran. So we'll see where this goes. Some strength of character. So Jill Biden asking her crowd, what did Donald Trump do? Lie? No, Donald Trump didn't lie. He told the truth. And far too few people know the truth and are prepared to listen to the truth because the poisonous media has been lying about it all along. Anyways, thank you so much for your time and attention. Please do drop a thumbs up. Gratifies my fragile male ego. And yes, do check out my book, The Tyranny, I forget the name of the fucking book. At any rate, check out my book, Deconstructing Social Justice. It's available on Amazon. It's important, not because I wrote it. I wrote it because the issues could not be more important. The trouble the United States has fallen into is because Joe Biden and the Democratic Party has been ideologically captured by these woke Marxists. And Joe Biden is just a sock puppet for this ideology. No, he's not running the government. Who is? Woke Marxists are running that government. Thank you so much for your time and attention. Bye-bye now.